Next on the news.
Nel volto di questi poveri è Cristo stesso che si presenta a voi.
Pope Francis now home after his apostolic journey to Malta. The Holy Father also making a statement about a possible visit to war-torn Ukraine. Also, concerns about both a surge in migrants at the southern border and a rise in COVID cases here in the U.S. Plus,
God put them in her life just to take care of her.
A family grateful for 2 police officers who rescued a woman from homelessness. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. After a warm welcome during his whirlwind trip to Malta, Pope Francis is back at the Vatican. The Holy Father spent 2 jam-packed days in the island nation for this historic, long overdue visit, one that was delayed because of the pandemic. He spoke about the war in Ukraine, corruption in Malta, but for the most part, the trip really drew attention to challenges in Europe regarding migration.
Dimentichiamo che l'Europa è stata fatta dai migranti, no? Ma così sono le cose, no?
Pope Francis ended his trip to Malta the same way he began it, talking about migration. On Saturday, the Holy Father attended a prayer meeting at the National Shrine of Ta Pinu, the most famous pilgrimage site in Malta. For years, this small Mediterranean island nation has borne the brunt of Europe's migration crisis.
Vi trovate in una posizione geografica cruciale che si affaccia sul Mediterraneo come polo di attrazione e approdo di salvezza per tante persone sballottate dalle tempeste della vita che per motivi diversi arrivano sulle vostre sponde. Nel volto di questi poveri è Cristo stesso che si presenta a voi.
That theme played out on the second day of the trip when the pontiff visited St. Paul's Grotto, where the apostle lived after being shipwrecked on his way to Rome.
Tu li ami senza distinzioni.
The Pope praying that Malta's spirit of welcome extended to the saint continues to the migrants that arrive now. The Holy Father then celebrated Mass in the nearby town of Floriana with a crowd of 20,000 before heading to his last stop, the Peace Lab, which houses migrants, to listen to stories of those finding refuge there.
I started a new life with the hope of getting better.
Although the migration crisis is a challenge, Pope Francis says he believes Christians can respond by welcoming with charity.
Rispondiamo alla sfida dei migranti e dei rifugiati con lo stile dell'umanità. Accendiamo fuochi di fraternità intorno ai quali le persone possono riscaldarsi, risollevarsi, riaccendere la speranza.
Pope Francis says the European countries need to come together to welcome refugees who arrive via the Mediterranean, just as they have welcomed those from Ukraine. Pope Francis also announced on the trip home from Malta that he was open to a trip to Ukraine. The Holy Father was asked on the flight about the possibility of a visit to the war-torn country, and he said it was definitely on the table. But as of right now, there are no immediate plans. The Pope also said there was talk of a meeting with Moscow Patriarch Kirill. A wave of international condemnation after emerging images show bodies of civilians across the streets of Bucha, Ukraine. President Joe Biden and Ukraine's president both calling the acts of violence a war crime. Isabel Rosales reports on the growing fallout.
Global outrage and calls for a war crimes trial against Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The perpetrators of all these violations and war crimes will be held accountable.
President Joe Biden vows more sanctions are on the way.
He is a war criminal. This guy is brutal. And what's happening in Bucha is outrageous.
Over the weekend, horrifying images out of Bucha near Kyiv. The bodies of at least 20 men, civilians, left scattered along a single street. The town's mayor saying this mass grave could carry up to 300 victims.
We shall never forgive them. They will never be forgiven on this earth or in heaven.
Despite all the video evidence, Russia claiming it's fake. Ukraine's president witnessing the atrocities from the ground, calling it a genocide. Unable to take control of parts of Ukraine, the Kremlin apparently revamping its war strategy, now shifting focus to eastern Ukraine, with a target date of control by early May, according to several U.S. officials.
When the war with Germany began, I was only 1.5 years.
This Holocaust survivor once escaped the Nazis as a baby. Now, at 82 years old, she's pushed out of her home for a second time.
It is very difficult when my beautiful town, when I lived all my life, is destroyed.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales, Currents News.
You too can help the people of Ukraine thanks to the Diocese of Brooklyn's Compostela Fund. 100% of the money collected will provide direct assistance to those affected by the war. Just make a check payable to the Compostela Fund of the Archdiocese of Brooklyn with the notation Ukraine and mail it to Diocesan Finance Office, 310 Prospect Park West, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. You can also give online at CatholicFoundationBQ.org/Ukraine. A pastor of a Bay Ridge church resigned this weekend after allegations of inappropriate behavior with adults. Bishop Robert Brennan wrote a letter to parishioners at St. Patrick's Church announcing Father Gerard Sauer's resignation. With profound regret, the bishop announced that the allegations violated Sauer's holy orders. The bishop dispatched a healing intervention team to the church, and they were available to provide pastoral care to churchgoers. He also appointed another neighboring pastor, Father Robert Adamo, as St. Patrick's temporary administrator. Father Adamo says his goal is to help heal, telling the tablet, quote, "Right now, that's my #1 priority, to support them and care for them in any way I can to bring about healing. If they want to talk to me, I will be there to listen. I want to listen to them and begin this journey, hopefully, towards healing together as the parish family." Also tonight, states sue over Title 42. They don't want it revoked, saying it will create a surge of migrants at the southern border. The policy essentially allows border officials to turn them away because of the pandemic, and it's set to end next month. But that comes at the same time COVID cases are expected to take off. Amy Kiley has the perfect storm of simultaneous spikes.
Surges in COVID-19 cases and asylum requests might soon hit the U.S. at the same time. The CDC is lifting a Trump administration order. It stopped most migrant crossings at the southern border, including those for asylum, since March 2020. Immigrant advocates argue Title 42 is about politics, but the stated reason for it is COVID-19. The CDC says it's lifting the measure May 23rd. It says prevention and mitigation strategies and public health conditions are better now. Refugees like this mother plan to cross the border as soon as they can. Officials expect as many as 18,000 migrant encounters at the southern border daily in the short term.
The goal for everyone should be to make sure those asylum claims, those claims of people fleeing persecution, are heard in a prompt way. Those who deserve protection from persecution get that protection. Those who don't are promptly sent back.
Add to that the 100,000 Ukrainian refugees President Joe Biden promised asylum.
The easiest way to get to the U.S. right now is not an easy way at all. It requires flying to Mexico and then eventually to Tijuana on the border, putting your name on a list and waiting.
They're seeking to enter a country where average daily COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have been going down nationwide. But experts say the highly contagious Omicron subvariant BA2 might be reversing those trends. Cases continue to fall in 21 states. They're plateauing in these areas and going up in more than a dozen states plus Puerto Rico. I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Meanwhile, after hearing that Title 42 will be revoked, many migrant caravans have already set off. And multiple clashes have already been reported. This group faced off against members of Mexico's National Guard who refrained from responding. They aim to arrive at the U.S. border in a matter of weeks. It's not only caravans from Central America arriving at the border. Hundreds of Ukrainians have also arrived in Tijuana seeking asylum, and that's more than expected. According to officials in the city, there are about 1,500 Ukrainians there right now, and that number is only expected to grow. They're experiencing bottlenecking, and mini camps are even beginning to pop up. There's a lot more news headed your way. The Bishop of Sacramento calling for goodwill after a tragic mass shooting early Sunday morning. And the push to get guns off the streets. New York City Mayor Eric Adams speaks with a mother still reeling from her son's murder. Plus, 2 Nevada police officers go above and beyond the heartwarming reunion of a homeless woman and her family. A Senate panel expected to vote on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court. Democrats are aiming to confirm her by the end of the week as the first black woman on the high court. All of the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee are opposing Jackson. Later this year, the High Court is expected to decide on a long-awaited case that challenges Roe v. Wade. In a press release expressing concern over Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination, the pro-life group, the Susan B. Anthony List, had this to say. Ketanji Brown Jackson is backed by many of America's most radical pro-abortion groups. She is on record opposing the free speech rights of pro-life advocates, pleading to save lives outside abortion centers, and supporting the false claim that abortion is health care. Pope Francis has appointed a Cincinnati pastor to shepherd Bishop Robert Brennan's former flock in the Diocese of Columbus. At 49 years old, Father Earl Fernandez will become one of the youngest Catholic bishops in the U.S. He worked as secretary at the nunciature from 2016 to 2019, and before that, he was dean of moral theology at Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Cincinnati. He is set to become the 13th Bishop of Columbus. His ordination and installation is scheduled for May 31st. Police in Sacramento are searching for multiple suspects in connection with a mass shooting that left at least 6 dead early Sunday morning. Lizzie Mitri is in Sacramento and spoke to a woman who witnessed the horrific ordeal.
We were staying at the hotel for a night. Our home is under construction, so we were just getting away from all the debris and dust in our house. And
Danny Chiswick of East Sacramento stayed at the Citizen Hotel at 10th and J in downtown Sacramento. She says her partner was having trouble sleeping.
He was already awake because the crowds out there were really, really loud, and he had gone to shut the curtain and knew that the club would be closing because it was, that 2 a.m. time frame. He went to lay back down, and that's when he said the shots started. And then it took me a little bit to wake up, and then I heard the second half of the shots.
A lot of gunshots, she says. They looked out their window facing London nightclub.
It was at that time that we saw a woman. She was running down the street right in front of the Citizen Hotel, and she kind of fell back and over, and her friends were kind of crowded around her. It looked like she was shot in the stomach area.
Eventually, they watched as police and paramedics arrived.
The part that's so devastating and traumatizing is you're just watching down on people scrambling, and then people distraught because they've obviously lost family members and things, and there's nothing you can do.
The families and friends of those who died are on her mind.
To be an onlooker to that, it just is horrifying to me to know that is. I know reports are coming out of some of the parents and things, and to know that those were their children, I want to send my deepest condolences to them.
That was Lizzie Mitri reporting. In response, Bishop Jaime Soto of the Diocese of Sacramento is calling on the faithful to act as good neighbors to one another, saying in a statement, "As neighbors, we ache for the tragedy that has exploded on our streets. As neighbors, we must share in the common task of healing and helping. Only then can we restore hope and peace in our communities. This must be our unrelenting response whenever violence wreaks its havoc among us." The shooting in Sacramento comes as New York City Mayor Eric Adams calls on the community to help him put an end to gun violence. He met with the family of a child who was shot and killed in Brooklyn last week.
Promising young people snatched away from us. for no other reason. Too many guns on our streets. Yep. Too many people who are willing to use those guns to harm innocent people.
Last Thursday, 12-year-old Cade Lewin was eating in a car with his cousin when they were caught in the crossfire of a shootout in East Flatbush. Cade's mother begged for the murderer to come forward. While Adams is urging the community to help address gun violence, he's also applauding the efforts made by the NYPD's anti-gun unit. Adams says the team has already confiscated more than 20 illegal guns since their deployment in mid-March. The unit has also made more than 100 arrests since then, and nearly 70% of those arrested have had prior criminal history. 2 Nevada police officers went above and beyond the call to save a homeless woman and reunite her with family. As Stephanie Elam reports, her loved ones were overjoyed to see her again.
She's not going to make it much longer. We didn't think.
Henderson police officers Carlos Chorins and Sterling Candlin felt they were up against the clock when they first encountered a feeble and homeless 75-year-old woman hidden behind a cement barrier.
She had a makeshift sling on her arm, and she just looked very run down. And we looked at each other and we're like, we're going to be here all day.
Rose Brasdovic didn't ask for the officers' help, but they spent 2 days with her and a man she considered her caretaker, asking questions.
She ended up selling her place, and she was going to go and do some traveling in a motorhome. Apparently that didn't work out.
I pretended that I was camping.
Chorins and Candlin also reached out to Rochelle Fletcher in Henderson's Community Resource and Resiliency Center to find a safe place for Rose.
She was a retiree from Walmart. She had finances that would keep her afloat.
I like to help people, and sometimes by helping people, they take advantage of it.
Rose also had a son that she lost touch with nearly 30 years ago.
I was determined to make sure that she got to see him.
I got a message on Facebook Messenger.
Through some social media sleuthing, Rochelle found Jennifer Macrina, the daughter-in-law Rose didn't even know she had, living in Louisiana. Turns out, Rose is also a grandmother. And it wasn't hard for you to open your heart back up?
No, it opened up immediately. I couldn't imagine living on the street.
Soon, Rose was ready to move to be with her family, and they were ready to welcome her. Leaving Las Vegas, she got a special airport escort.
We walked her right down to the gate.
She thanked us, and she was very excited to see her family.
I really enjoyed the plane ride. I had never been on an airplane before.
Big spot, Grandma.
What's been the most fun of your transition to life in Louisiana?
All right, good job.
I got to have a family. That is the best part.
God put them in her life just to take care of her. Excuse me, I'm tearing up a little bit.
A family's fresh start thanks to 2 police officers who never stopped caring.
It's incredible. It makes you feel so like you accomplished something and you help somebody out.
Wow, that was Stephanie Elam reporting. Rose says she now spends her time playing basketball and going on bike rides with her 2 grandsons. Still to come on Currents News, it's a special memorial mass for a parish hero, how a Brooklyn church is honoring a soon-to-be Baseball Hall of Famer. Plus, a trio of athletes pushing beyond their limits, why they have God to thank for the opportunity.
So thank you all from the Hodges family, and most of all, thank God. Thank you.
Marking 50 years since the passing of a parish hero, Our Lady Help of Christians in Midwood held a memorial mass for Gil Hodges, who is set to become a Baseball Hall of Famer. The Brooklyn legend was a parishioner at the church and often said a Hail Mary before big league games. And while he will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in July, his parish also dedicated their statue of St. Joseph in his honor. And that's not the only dedication in the Diocese of Brooklyn. The sports program at St. Athanasius Catholic Church in Bensonhurst dedicated a newly renovated basketball court to their beloved pastor, Monsignor David Casado. The church's basketball program has been going strong since 1936, and it offers children from the ages of 3 to 14 the opportunity to learn the basics of sportsmanship and teamwork. And finally, the inspirational story of a family of athletes who are all pushing beyond their limits. But they're not just any athletes. They're a trio of Paralympians competing to make history. Lance Allen has their story from Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Who's the strongest?
Right here, definitely.
What workout?
I'll be over all of this.
No, you wouldn't. And
Yes.
squat, I would destroy you.
Joshua, Emma, and Lucas Young. Just 3 ultra-competitive kids with a slight twist. Josh has spina bifida and a club foot. Lucas was born without fibulas in each leg.
Come on, Emma, you got this!
Emma has spina bifida, scoliosis, and a leg amputated.
When I was little, I usually used 2 crutches, and then I got in my way. I want to run a little bit faster than everybody, so I just decided to use 1 crutch.
I don't want to be put at a limit, like, oh, just because he has this, we're going to treat him this way.
Lucas and Emma are Paralympic high school All-Americans in track and field, while Josh and Emma have done things no other Kenosha Indian Trail athletes have done.
My siblings were the first students to bring state runner-up track and field in Indian Trail's entire track and field history.
All to the amazement of their parents.
We didn't really know anything about adaptive sports, honestly, until she showed up and she started getting us involved in some of that stuff. Then she said, well, now there's the wheelchair basketball practice, and then there's track is coming up, and then if you show up at this and you show up at that, and then there's an event coming up. We were not athletes. So that
I'm sure you couldn't tell from my physique.
The Young family adopted the 3 from Mongolia after losing their 6-year-old son to cancer.
They're not a project, right? They're our kids.
I'm very thankful for them adopting me.
What do any kids bring to a family, right? It's part of, it's just a measure of completeness.
Lucas competes against able-bodied athletes in football and swim.
To be honest with you, sometimes I don't know what gets me through it, but most of the times I know it's just my sports. It gets me out of stress sometimes in my life.
And then joins Emma and Josh as inspirations on the track.
If I'm good at something, and then when they try it, I was like, no, you're not doing that, no.
I'm just saying, it's like, don't quit whatever you're stuck on. Just keep going forward. Don't just stop.
All forcing their parents to try and keep up.
God's faithfulness. Really the overarching theme of the whole thing, of our lives, of all the trials, of all of the difficulties, of the ups, the downs, that string runs through all of it.
So amazing. That was Lance Allen reporting. Heidi and Peter first adopted their son Lucas in 2011, and after much prayer and prodding from him, they went back to Mongolia to adopt Emma and Josh. Love that story. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you now with this final remembrance of the Pope's apostolic journey to Malta. Hope to see you again next time.